Chapter 1 of Grace Harlowe's Return to Overton Campus. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Grace Harlowe's Return to Overton Campus by Jessie Graham Flower. Chapter 1 A Midsummer Pilgrimage. "Overton at last!" exclaimed Grace Harlowe, as regardless of possible cinders and stern railroad injunctions, she leaned far out of the car window to obtain a first eager glimpse of her destination. It was midsummer, and the quiet little town of Overton drowsed gently, not to awaken until the sounds of girl laughter and the passing of light feet through its sleepy streets roused it to the realization that it was Overton College that made its humdrum existence worth while. "Oh, Mrs. Gray, you can't imagine how happy I feel," went on Grace, her eyes eloquent with emotion. "Next to home I love Overton better than any other place on the earth. I'm so glad we are going to stay at Wayne Hall and that Mrs. Elwood is to meet us." A long, shrill whistle, a creaking and groaning of protesting iron wheels, the stentorian cry of "Overton! Overton!" and then a sudden jarring stop. Grace reached to the rack overhead for Mrs. Gray's small leather bag, allowing the dainty little old lady to precede her down the aisle, which was practically clear. Apparently they were the only Overton passengers in the car. She stood still on the top step of the train until Mrs. Gray had been safely landed on the platform by the smiling porter, then, disdaining his helping hand, ran down the steps with a joyful skip that caused her companion to say indulgently, "You'll never grow up, Grace, and I'm glad of it. I can't become reconciled to the fact that Nora and Jessica are brides-to-be, and Anne's art is making her terribly serious. It's a joy to my old age to see you frisk about, as happy as you did when you were a little thing, in short white skirts with two long braids of fair hair hanging down your back." "I don't really feel a bit older than I did then," confessed Grace. "Sometimes I'm almost ashamed of my enthusiasm. It seems as though nice things are always happening to me, and this summer pilgrimage of just we two is the nicest of all." They were walking slowly across the deserted platform now, and Grace was keeping a sharp lookout on all sides for the short, comfortable figure of Mrs. Elwood. "There she is!" Grace hurried forward, her hands outstretched. The next instant they were held in Mrs. Elwood's welcoming grasp, while she kissed Grace's soft cheek. "My dear, dear girl!" she exclaimed, a suspicious moisture in her kindly blue eyes. "It does seem good to see you again. I'm very glad to welcome you to Overton, Mrs. Gray." She turned to shake hands with the donor of Harlowe House. "And delighted to know that you are going to stay with me instead of going to the Tourraine. Miss Harlowe's old room is ready for her, and I'm going to put you in the room Miss Nesbit and Miss Briggs used to have. You'll be haunted by the kimono-clad shades of Miriam and Elfreda drinking tea and eating cakes at unseemly hours of the night," laughed Grace. "How are all my girls?" asked Mrs. Elwood. "I don't know what I shall do without them this year. You will have to come and see me often and tell me all about them, Miss Harlowe. Now let me see. There ought to be a taxicab just the other side of the station. Yes, there it is." The driver touched his cap smilingly to Grace as they climbed into the automobile. "It does look good to see you here again, miss," he said respectfully. "Thank you. I'm glad to see you again." Grace beamed wholeheartedly upon him. How many times he had carried her to and from the station. It was he who had driven the car on that memorable day when Ruth Denton had gone to the station to meet her father. Grace's eyes grew dreamy as they passed through the familiar streets. How much had happened since the time when she had entered Oakdale High School as a freshman with college in the far and hidden future. To her many friends, Grace Harlowe's plebe year at high school, Grace Harlowe's sophomore year at high school, Grace Harlowe's junior year at high school, and Grace Harlowe's senior year at high school are now familiar records. Equally well known to these friends is the story of her freshman year at Overton, as set forth in Grace Harlowe's first year at Overton College. Accompanied by her friends Miriam, Nesbit, and Anne Pierson, Grace began her freshman year at Overton College under a cloud which rose from her ready defense of J. Elfreda Briggs, a disgruntled student who had made enemies of two sophomores, and whose first day at college were made very unpleasant by them. J. Elfreda's subsequent
Sample complete. Ready to continue?